The conference hall floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure built from the combined resources of 12 different species. Inside, the air felt heavy with fear and desperation. Ambassador Tala stood at the center podium, her blue skin darker than usual from stress. Around her, representatives from the Coalition of Free Worlds waited for answers that nobody had. "They will be here in 6 days," Tala said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "The Krydian hegemony has mobilized their entire war fleet. 3,000 vessels, perhaps more." A murmur of despair rippled through the assembled delegates. 3,000 ships. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. The Krydians had crushed 17 civilizations in the past 40 years. 17 distinct species, each with their own cultures, technologies, and defensive capabilities. All of them had fallen before the relentless advance of the hegemony. Council leader Vorash, a towering figure from the Dendril species, slammed his 4 fists on his desk. "We have perhaps 800 vessels between all our worlds. 800 against 3,000. This is not a battle. This is an execution. We must evacuate," suggested Representative Kina, her feathers ruffling with agitation. "Save what populations we can. Flee deeper into uncharted space, and let them hunt us down world by world." Talvera shook her head. "No, we make our stand here at the Valoran Nexus. If we fall together. But we show them that some species will not simply surrender." The debate raged for hours. Every delegate knew the truth. Even as they argued, they could not win. The Krydian military machine was too powerful, too experienced, too ruthless. But surrendering meant slavery at best, extinction at worst. So they would fight, and they would die, and perhaps someone, somewhere would remember they had tried. In the middle of the heated discussion, a junior aide rushed into the chamber. His face showed confusion more than urgency. "Ambassador Tala, forgive the interruption, but there is a fleet requesting permission to dock." "We are not expecting reinforcements," Talva said, though hope flickered in her chest. "Who are they?" They say they are. From Earth humans. First contact fleet. They call themselves." The chamber fell silent. Humans. The name meant little to most of the assembled leaders. Tala quickly accessed her datapad, pulling up the files on this species. Young. Very young. They had only achieved faster than light travel 200 years ago. In galactic terms, they were infants. "How many ships?" Voros asked, his tone suggesting he expected perhaps 50 vessels. Maybe 100 if they were lucky. The aide checked his communication device. 47 ships, Council Leader." The hope that had briefly lit TA's face died. 47. They were grateful for any help, but what could 47 ships do against 3,000? Still, it would be insulting to refuse their aid. These humans were willing to die alongside them. That deserved respect. "Grant them permission to dock," Talva said quietly. "We will meet with their commanders and coordinate our defensive strategy." 3 hours later, the human delegation arrived. They wore simple, dark blue uniforms with minimal decoration. Their leader, who introduced himself as Admiral James Chen, was shorter than most species in the coalition. His hair was gray, his face lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He studied each delegate carefully as introductions were made. "We appreciate your willingness to stand with us," Tala said formally. "Though I must be honest with you, Admiral Chen, our chances of survival are minimal. The Krytanian hegemony has never been defeated in open battle." "We know," Chen replied, his voice calm. "We reviewed the intelligence reports during our journey here. Impressive military force, excellent tactical coordination. They use overwhelming numbers and sustained firepower to break enemy formations." "Then you understand this is likely a suicide mission," Vorash said bluntly. "Every mission is a suicide mission if you approach it wrong," Chen said, and something in his tone made several delegates shift uncomfortably. "We have a different proposal. Give us 72 hours before the Krydians arrive. Let us prepare the battlefield." "Prepare the battlefield." Kina's feathers ruffled again. "Admiral, with respect, we have been fortifying our positions for weeks. We have orbital platforms, minefields, defensive installations, all of which the Krydians have encountered and defeated before." Chen interrupted gently. "No disrespect to your efforts, Representative, but you are fighting them on their terms with their rulebook. We would like to try something different. Tala studied the human admiral carefully. There was something unsettling about his confidence. Not arrogance exactly, more like the certainty of someone who had seen this situation before and knew how it ended. "What do you need from us?" she asked finally. "Access to all your communication networks, control of the information warfare suite, and permission to broadcast on all frequencies, including Krydian military channels." The chamber erupted in confused conversation. Vorse's 4 eyes narrowed suspiciously. "You want to talk to them? The Krydians do not negotiate, human. They conquer or they destroy. We do not intend to negotiate," Chen said. "We intend to prepare the battlefield. Will you trust us?" Tala looked around the chamber. What did they have to lose? They were already dead. If the humans wanted to waste their last days sending messages into the void, so be it. "You have your 72 hours, Admiral Chen. May fortune favor your efforts." Chen nodded and left with his delegation. As the doors closed behind them, Kina leaned toward Tala. "What do you think they are planning?" I have no idea," Tala admitted. "But I accessed their species file while they were talking. Did you know humans have only been spacefaring for 2 centuries? But they have had 37 major planetary conflicts in that time. War among themselves." Vorash grunted. "Barbarians fighting barbarians. What of it? The casualty counts," Talvera said quietly. "In their last global conflict, before they achieved spaceflight, they killed over 70 million of their own species. In 6 years, the number settled over the group like ice water. 70 million. Most species had never experienced casualties on that scale in their entire recorded history. Perhaps," Talva said softly, "we should let the barbarians try their way. Aboard the human flagship, the Indomitable Will." Admiral Chen stood in the command center, surrounded by his senior staff. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency as crew members moved between stations, preparing for the operation ahead. "Status report," Chen said. Commander Sarah Park, the fleet's intelligence officer, pulled up multiple holographic displays. "We have full access to the Coalition's communication networks. Krydian military frequencies identified and monitored. Their advanced scout fleet is approximately 4 days out. Main battle group 6 days as expected." "Good. Begin Operation Ghost Protocol. I want psychological profiles on every Kryan commander in their fleet. Access their public records, military databases, personal communications if possible. Find their fears, their doubts, their weaknesses." "Sir, the Kryans have very good cybersecurity," Park said. "Breaking into their systems will take time." Chen smiled thinly. "We are not going to break in, Commander. We are going to be invited in. Begin broadcasting our introduction package on all Krydian frequencies. Make sure it reaches every ship in their fleet." The introduction package was a carefully prepared collection of information about humanity. Not propaganda, not threats, just facts, historical records, video footage, statistical data, all freely offered, all accurately presented, all completely horrifying to any species that took the time to review it. Footage of nuclear weapons detonating in testing grounds, cities vanishing in pillars of fire and radiation, recordings from human wars, the trenches of the First World War, the carpet bombing of the Second, the tactical nuclear exchanges of the Third, numbers scrolling past, casualties, weapons counts, destruction statistics, and woven through it all, a simple message: humanity welcomes peaceful contact with the Krydian hegemony. We hope conflict can be avoided. However, we have extensive experience in warfare and stand ready to defend our allies. Please review our military history for context. 12 hours later, the first Krydian scout ships received the broadcasts. Their commanders watched with growing unease as human history unfolded before them. These were not the records of a peaceful species slowly forced into conflict. These were the records of a species that had nearly exterminated itself multiple times and somehow survived. Commander Vexrath, of the Krydian scout vessel Eternal Conquest, stared at his display screen in disbelief. The footage showed a human city before an atomic explosion, then the same city after. Nothing but rubble and ash for kilometers in every direction. And the humans had done this to themselves hundreds of times, just to test their weapons. "Analysis," he barked at his intelligence officer. "The data appears authentic. Commander cross-referenced with multiple sources. The humans engaged in 3 global conflicts within a span of 100 years. Combined casualties exceed 200 million individuals. Vexrath's blood ran cold. 200 million. The entire Critian hegemony had perhaps 5 billion citizens across all their conquered worlds. These humans had killed the equivalent of 4% of the hegemony's population, just fighting among themselves. "What kind of species does this to itself?" he whispered. His intelligence officer had no answer. The broadcasts continued for 48 hours, reaching deeper into the Critian fleet. Admiral Chen had not lied in his message. Everything presented was factual, historical, verifiable. But the selection of facts, the way they were presented, the timing of each revelation, all of it was carefully calculated to create a specific impression. Humanity was insane. Humanity was dangerous. Humanity had survived things that would have destroyed any other species. And now humanity was here, offering peace, but prepared for war. On the second day, Chen ordered the fleet to begin training exercises. The 47 human vessels moved through space in perfect synchronization, executing complex maneuvers that required split-second timing and absolute precision. They flew in formations no other species used, shifted between patterns with mechanical efficiency, and demonstrated weapons accuracy that approached the theoretical maximum of their technology. Coalition observers watched in amazement. Vorash contacted Chen directly. "Admiral, your ships move like they are parts of a single organism. How do you achieve such coordination?" "Practice," Chen replied simply. "Humans have been fighting fleet actions for centuries. We have refined our tactics considerably." What Chen did not mention was that human ships were also corked together through quantum-encrypted communication channels. Their targeting systems linked their tactical computers, sharing data in real time. Each vessel was autonomous, but together they operated as a unified intelligence. It was technology the Coalition did not possess, and the Cathians had never encountered. On the third day, with the Critian fleet now 3 days from engagement range, Chen ordered the final phase of the operation. The human ships began broadcasting on every frequency simultaneously, not messages this time. Sounds, recordings from human wars, the thunder of artillery, the screaming of dying soldiers, the roar of bomber engines, radio chatter from tank crews, pilots, infantry units, all speaking in calm, professional tones about killing and death, and objectives achieved, and music. Humans had created music about war, songs celebrating victory and mourning loss and glorifying sacrifice. The lyrics spoke of death and honor and fighting until the last breath. The Critians received these broadcasts and felt something their species had rarely experienced: deep, primal fear. This was not a species that feared death. This was a species that had made death into an art form, a cultural touchstone, something to be faced with grim determination or even eagerness. In the asteroid field near the Valoran Nexus, 3 Crithian scout ships moved on routine patrol. They were maintaining communication silence as ordered, observing the Coalition defenses and the strange human fleet that had arrived. Then, one by one, the ships vanished from Critian sensors. Not destroyed, not damaged, simply gone, as if they had never existed. The Critian command ship demanded status reports. None came. Search vessels were dispatched. When they found the 3 scout ships, they were drifting in space, completely intact. Life support was functional. Weapons were undamaged. But the crews were unresponsive, huddled in their quarters, staring at nothing with wide, terrified eyes. And in each ship's central computer, the humans had left a message. A detailed tactical analysis of that specific vessel. Every weakness identified. Every system, vulnerability mapped, and a simulation, a perfect mathematically precise simulation, showing exactly how that ship would be destroyed if battle occurred. Down to the second, down to which crew members would die first, and which would survive longest. The recovered crews could not speak. Medical officers classified them as catatonic, traumatized beyond immediate treatment, and their ships, their perfectly functional, undamaged ships, had been infiltrated without a single shot fired, without any sign of forced entry. As if the humans had simply walked through the walls like ghosts, Admiral Krelvor, Supreme Commander of the Krydian Warfleet, reviewed the reports in his command chamber. 3,000 vessels strong, his fleet had never known defeat. But now, 3 days from engagement with an enemy that should be pathetically weak, he felt uncertainty creeping into his thoughts. 47 ships. That was all the humans had. 47 against 3,000. The mathematics were simple. The outcome should be inevitable. So why did his hands shake when he reviewed the human broadcasts? He opened the latest intelligence file. It contained a message from the humans transmitted directly to his personal communication channel. Admiral Krelvor. Humanity extends greetings and hopes for peaceful resolution. However, if conflict is unavoidable, we are prepared. We have studied your tactics extensively. We look forward to meeting you in battle. May the most adaptable species prevail. Attached to the message was a single video file. Kavor hesitated, then opened it. The video showed a human city at night, peaceful and beautiful. Then the sky lit up with the flash of nuclear detonation. The city evaporated. The camera, somehow surviving the blast, showed the aftermath. Nothing but radioactive wasteland. And beneath the video, a simple caption. We did this to ourselves. Imagine what we will do to you. Krelvor closed the file with trembling fingers. In 3 days, his fleet would engage the enemy. 3,000 ships against 47. The outcome was certain, wasn't it? The Krydian Warfleet moved through space like a swarm of predatory insects. 3,000 vessels, maintaining perfect formation as they approached the Valoran Nexus. Inside the command ship, Eternal Dominance, Admiral Krelvor sat in his tactical chamber, reviewing intelligence reports. The reports should have given him confidence. Instead, they filled him with growing dread. His intelligence officer, Sub-Commander Tarnks, stood at attention before him. The younger Krydian scales showed the pale green of uncertainty, a color Krelvor had rarely seen in his crew. Explain these findings again, Krelvor demanded, gesturing at the holographic display floating between them. Slowly. Tarnks swallowed nervously. Sir, we have completed our analysis of the human historical database they provided. The data has been verified through multiple independent sources. It is accurate. 200 million casualties, Krelvor said flatly, in conflicts against themselves. Yes, sir. But that is not the most concerning aspect. Tarnks manipulated the display, bringing up new information. We have analyzed their weapon development timeline. They progressed from chemical explosives to nuclear fission weapons in approximately 40 years, from fish to fusion weapons in another 15 years, from planetary bombardment capability to planet-destroying capability in less than a century. Kavor stared at the numbers. The Krydian hegemony had taken 4 centuries to develop similar weapons technology, and they had been considered remarkably fast by galactic standards. They were in a hurry. Tarnks continued, his voice barely above a whisper. Every advancement, every new weapon system was developed during active warfare. They were not preparing for theoretical conflicts. They were actively trying to destroy each other and needed better tools to accomplish it. The Admiral pulled up another file, one that had been keeping him awake during rest cycles. It was a human documentary about something they called nuclear deterrence strategy. The concept was simple and absolutely insane. Develop weapons so powerful that using them would guarantee your own destruction. Then convince your enemies you were crazy enough to use them anyway. Mutually assured destruction, Krelvor read aloud. They had a formal military doctrine based on being willing to end their own civilization rather than surrender. Quote, yes, sir. And they maintained that doctrine for over 60 years. Multiple nations, all aiming enough weapons at each other to render their planet uninhabitable, all waiting to see who would destroy everyone first. Kvor felt his combat instincts warring with his survival instincts. The Krydian way of war was based on overwhelming force and logical calculation. You gathered superior numbers, applied maximum pressure, and forced the enemy to recognize the futility of resistance. Most species surrendered when they understood they could not win. But humans had nearly exterminated themselves rather than surrender to each other. What would they do when facing a foreign enemy? A communication alert interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, we are receiving another broadcast from the human fleet. Same frequency pattern as before. Wide spectrum reaching every ship in our formation. Put it through, Krelvor ordered. The display shifted to show Admiral Chen, standing on what appeared to be the bridge of his flagship. The human looked calm, almost relaxed. He spoke in perfect Crit without translation delay. "Greetings, Admiral Krelvor and warriors of the Cryan hegemony. I am Admiral James Chen of the Human First Contact Fleet. I hope this message finds you well. As you approach the Valoran Nexus, I wanted to personally ensure you have all necessary information before our potential engagement." Chen gestured, and the display behind him showed tactical data, fleet compositions, defensive positions, weapons capabilities, everything laid out clearly and openly. As you can see, the coalition forces at the Nexus consist of approximately 800 vessels of various classifications. Our fleet adds 47 ships to that number. Your fleet numbers? 3,000 vessels. By any logical calculation, you have overwhelming numerical superiority. Krelvor leaned forward. Where was the human going with this? However, Chen continued, his expression never changing. "I wanted to share some additional context that may be relevant to your tactical planning." The display shifted again, showing what appeared to be a human military medal. It was a simple piece of metal, shaped like a star suspended from a ribbon. "This is called the Medal of Honor," Chen explained. "It is the highest military decoration humanity offers. It is awarded for acts of valor above and beyond the call of duty. To receive this medal, a soldier must risk their life in combat, while facing near certain death. In our last major conflict, 342 of these medals were awarded. 316 of them were awarded posthumously. That means the recipients died performing the action for which they were honored." The Admiral paused, letting that information settle. "We give medals to our dead, Admiral Krelvor. We celebrate those who choose death over retreat. We teach our children stories about last stands and final sacrifices. We consider it honorable to die rather than surrender." Chen's eyes seemed to look directly through the screen at Krelvor. "I tell you this not as a threat, but as a courtesy, so you understand the nature of the force you are about to engage. We are not a warrior species by preference. We are a survivor species by necessity. We have been tested by ourselves for thousands of years and we are still here. We know how to endure, we know how to fight, and we know how to win." The transmission ended. The bridge of the eternal dominance was silent, except for the ambient sounds of the ship's systems. Finally, Krelvor spoke. "Analysis." Tarnex hesitated. "Sir, I believe the humans are attempting psychological warfare. They are trying to make us fear them before the battle begins. Are they succeeding?" The intelligence officer scales flickered between green and gray uncertainty and fear. "Yes, sir. Morale reports from across the fleet show increased anxiety. Crew efficiency is down approximately 12%. We have had 43 requests for transfer from frontline vessels. 2 captains have reported crew members experiencing stress-induced illness." Kavor closed his eyes. 12% efficiency loss before the battle even started. Against a conventional enemy, it would barely matter. But the humans had shown they were not conventional. Over the next day, the human psychological campaign intensified. The human fleet began conducting training exercises that seemed designed to demonstrate their capabilities. The 47 vessels moved through complex maneuvers that required absolutely perfect coordination. They flew in formation patterns that seemed impossible. Ships passing within meters of each other at high velocity, executing simultaneous course changes, moving as if controlled by a single mind. And their weapons accuracy was terrifying. During target practice against coalition-provided drone targets, the human fleet achieved a 97% hit rate at ranges that most species considered beyond effective engagement distance. They fired once per target, and almost never missed. Worse, they demonstrated weapons systems the Cryans had not encountered before. Railgun systems that fired projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. Missile systems that could independently hunt targets across vast distances. Point defense lasers that could track and destroy incoming fire with machine precision. Energy shields that seemed to distribute damage across the entire fleet rather than allowing individual ships to be overwhelmed. Coalition observers were shocked. Vor contacted Admiral Chen with undisguised amazement. "Your 47 ships have more firepower than our entire 800-vessel fleet. Why did you not tell us this when you arrived?" Chen's response was characteristically simple. "You did not ask." And firepower is only one factor in warfare. The Cryans have plenty of firepower. They do not lack for weapons or ships. They lack something else. And that is what we are targeting. What are you targeting? Their certainty, Chen said. Their confidence that they will win. We are showing them that victory is not inevitable, and that doubt is spreading through their fleet like a disease. He was right. By the second day before the scheduled engagement, Critian efficiency ratings had dropped to 73%. More crew members were reporting for medical evaluation with stress symptoms. Communications between ships showed increased chatter, increased uncertainty, increased questioning of orders. Admiral Krelvor called an emergency command meeting with his senior captains. The holographic chamber was filled with the projected images of his most experienced officers, veterans of dozens of successful campaigns. But now their scales showed colors he had never seen in his commanders before. Uncertainty, fear, doubt. Report your status, Kaveh ordered. Captain Vexnell of the heavy cruiser, Infinite Fury, spoke first. Admiral, my crew is on edge. The broadcasts from the humans have unsettled them. They keep watching the footage of human wars. 70 million dead in 6 years. Nuclear weapons used in combat. Cities destroyed in seconds. My crew is asking how we fight an enemy like this. You fight them the same way we fight everyone, Kaveh snapped. With superior numbers and superior firepower. But sir, another captain interjected, the humans are showing us they have faced enemies with superior numbers and superior firepower before. They faced themselves, and they kept fighting until everyone was dead or the weapons ran out. How do we threaten an enemy that has already survived the worst possible warfare? Krelvor had no good answer. The meeting dissolved into worried discussion, with captains sharing reports of declining morale, increased anxiety, and growing reluctance to engage. This was unprecedented. The Korean fleet had never experienced morale problems before. That night, another 3 scout ships disappeared. They were further back in the formation, this time supposedly safe from any infiltration. But when they were recovered, the same scenario played out. Crews catatonic with fear, ships intact but penetrated without any sign of forced entry, and messages left in their computers. These messages were more detailed than before. They included personal information about crew members, names, family situations, homeworlds, psychological profiles, and simulations showing not just how the ships would be destroyed, but casualty projections for each crew member. Probability of survival, 0%. Expected time of death calculated to the second. Method of death described in clinical detail. The recovered crews could not explain how the humans had gotten aboard. Security footage showed nothing. Sensors detected no intrusions. But the humans had been there, moving through the ships like ghosts, leaving their messages and departing without a trace. Krelvor reviewed the latest message personally. It had been left on one of the scout ships addressed to him specifically. Admiral Krelvor, we respect you as a fellow military commander. We understand you are following orders and serving your people. We do not wish to destroy your fleet or kill your crews, but we will if we must. Please consider, humanity has been fighting wars for thousands of years. We have developed strategies you have never encountered. We have psychological operations refined through centuries of conflict. We have learned how to win battles without firing shots. By making the enemy question whether fighting is worth the cost, you outnumber us 64-1. In a conventional battle, you would likely win, though at enormous cost. But we are not offering you a conventional battle. We are offering you a choice. Withdraw peacefully, or discover what we have learned about warfare in our long and bloody history. Choose wisely. Choose survival. There is no shame in choosing life over pointless death. The message ended with an attachment. Kor hesitated, then opened it. It was his personal file. Everything about him. His family, his career, his accomplishments, his fears. Information that should have been secured behind multiple layers of Critan military encryption. The humans had it all, and at the bottom of the file, a simple note. We know you. We understand you. We do not want to kill you. Please give us a reason not to. Kavor's hands shook as he closed the file. How had they gotten this information? How had they penetrated Critian security so completely? What else did they know? His communication officer interrupted his thoughts. Admiral, we are receiving reports from across the fleet. The humans have sent personal messages to over 2,000 crew members. Individual messages addressing them by name, showing knowledge of their families and personal situations. The messages are not threatening. They are sympathetic, understanding. They acknowledge that our crew members are following orders and serving their people. They express hope that everyone survives. They suggest that choosing life over meaningless death is not cowardice, but wisdom. Shut down all external communications, Krelvor ordered. No more broadcasts from the humans reach this fleet. Sir, they are using every frequency simultaneously. We would have to shut down our entire communication grid to block them completely. That would leave us unable to coordinate fleet movements. Kavor slammed his fist against his command console. The humans had trapped them perfectly. Block communications and lose coordination, or keep communications open and let human psychological warfare continue eroding morale. Sir, his tactical officer said hesitantly, perhaps we should consider the human offer. Withdraw peacefully. Report to High Command that the situation is more complex than initial intelligence suggested. Withdraw. Kelvor's voice was harsh. The Krydian hegemony does not withdraw. We do not retreat from inferior forces. We do not surrender, because the enemy is good at talking. But even as he said the words, Krelvor felt the doubt growing in his own mind. The humans were not just good at talking. They were good at everything they had demonstrated so far, and they had demonstrated only a tiny fraction of their capabilities. What would happen when the battle actually started in the Coalition Command Center? Ambassador Tala and the other leaders watched the human operations with growing amazement. They had expected the humans to fight. Instead, the humans were systematically dismantling Krydian morale without firing a single shot. How are they doing this? Kina asked, her feathers flat against her body in confusion. The Krydians should be attacking. They have overwhelming force. Instead, their fleet is slowing down, showing hesitation. Tala studied the tactical displays, showing both fleet positions. Admiral Chen is doing exactly what he said he would do. He is preparing the battlefield. But the battlefield is not in space. It is in the minds of the Krydian commanders and crews. Vorash rumbled thoughtfully. These humans understand something we do not. They have fought themselves for so long that they know every weakness, every doubt, every fear that soldiers experience. And they are exploiting that knowledge perfectly. Will it work? Kina asked. It is already working, Tala replied, pointing at the morale statistics they were receiving from intercepted Krydian communications. The enemy fleet is experiencing a collapse of confidence, not because they are weak, but because the humans have shown them exactly what fighting humanity would cost, and the cost is too high. On the human flagship, Admiral Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. Operation Ghost Protocol was exceeding expectations. Krydian morale was below 70% and still falling. Fleet coordination was degrading. Individual ships were experiencing equipment failures, not because of any human action, but because stressed crews were making mistakes. Phase 3 is ready to deploy, sir, Commander Park reported. Shall we proceed? Chen nodded slowly. Yes. Let us show them what we truly are. Not conquerors, not warriors, but survivors who have learned that the best victory is the one where everyone lives to go home. Send the final message. The broadcast went out on all frequencies simultaneously, reaching every ship in the Krydian fleet and every member of the coalition. Admiral Chen's face appeared on every screen. Warriors of the Krydian hegemony, leaders of the coalition of free worlds, I speak to you now with complete honesty. Humanity does not seek war. We seek survival. We have survived wars that would have destroyed any other species. We have survived ourselves, and we have learned something important from our terrible history. The greatest victory is not the one achieved through destruction, but the one achieved through understanding. Admiral Krelvor, your fleet still outnumbers us significantly. You could still force a battle, but I ask you to consider, what would you gain? A devastated coalition that provides no value to your hegemony. A fleet diminished by casualties against an enemy that fights with the desperation of those who have nothing left to lose? Or could you gain something more valuable? A peaceful resolution, a new beginning, a chance to prove that intelligence and wisdom can triumph over violence. The choice is yours. Choose wisely. The galaxy is watching. The transmission ended. In the command center of the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Krelvor stared at his displays and felt the weight of impossible decisions pressing down on him. His fleet was disintegrating from within. His crews were afraid. His captains were questioning orders, and the enemy had not yet fired a single shot. 24 hours remained until engagement range. 24 hours to decide whether to attack or withdraw. 24 hours to choose between pride and survival. The humans waited in perfect formation. 47 ships against 3,000, completely calm and absolutely terrifying in their confidence. And in the silence of space, Admiral Krelvor realized something that chilled him more than any human broadcast. He was afraid. For the first time in his military career, he was genuinely afraid of the enemy he faced. The humans had won the psychological battle completely. The missing scout ships were found drifting near the outer asteroid belt, silent and dark against the backdrop of space. When the Kree recovery teams boarded them, they found something far worse than destroyed vessels or dead crews. They found crews that were alive but broken, huddled in corners, staring at nothing with wide, empty eyes. Medical officers tried to get responses from them, but the scouts could not speak, could not move, could barely register that anyone else was present. Subcommander Tarnks led the investigation team aboard one of the recovered vessels. The ship was completely intact. Life support was functioning normally. Weapons were armed and ready, but something had happened here that had shattered the crew's minds without touching their bodies. Check the ship's computer core, Tarnks ordered. Find out what they saw. No. The technical specialist worked quickly, accessing the ship's databanks. What he found made his scales turn pale gray. Sir, there are files here that were not there before. They are marked with human identification codes. They appear to be personal messages. Play them, Tarnks commanded, though dread already coiled in his stomach. The first message appeared on the main display. It showed Admiral Chen sitting at a simple desk looking directly at the camera with calm, understanding eyes. But he was not speaking to Tarnks, or any commander. He was speaking to Scout Leader Velar, the captain of this vessel. Scout Leader Velar, greetings. I hope this message finds you well. I wanted to speak with you personally, because I believe you deserve honesty. My intelligence officers have compiled information about you and your crew. I know this may seem frightening, but I assure you, this information was gathered for one purpose only, to help me understand who you are, so I can speak to you, as one military professional to another. The display changed, showing a detailed dossier on Velar, his service record, his family connections, his homeworld, everything about him laid out with disturbing completeness. You have served the Krydian hegemony with distinction for 23 years, Chen continued. You have a mate and 3 offspring on the colony world of Crus 4. Your service record shows you are a careful commander who values the lives of your crew. This tells me you are an intelligent individual who understands that warfare should have purpose beyond simple destruction. The display shifted again, this time showing something that made Tarnks's blood run cold. It was a tactical simulation rendered in perfect detail. It showed this exact scout ship in this exact location, and it showed what would happen if battle commenced. The simulation ran for 2 minutes and 17 seconds. It showed the ship being targeted by human weapon systems. It showed the shields failing. It showed the hull being breached in 3 locations. And it showed with clinical precision which crew members would die in which sections and in what order. Probability of crew survival, 0%. Expected duration of combat before ship destruction, 2 minutes 17 seconds. Casualties 100%, no survivors. This is not a threat. Chen's voice continued over the simulation. This is simply what our tactical computers predict would happen to your vessel if fighting begins. I show you this not to frighten you, but to help you understand the reality of the situation. Your ship is brave, your crew is skilled, but the mathematics of modern warfare are unforgiving. The simulation ended. Chen's face returned to the screen. Scout Leader Velar, I do not want to destroy your ship. I do not want to kill you or your crew. You are not my enemy. You are a fellow soldier following orders, serving your people, trying to survive in a complicated galaxy. I respect that. I understand that. And I want you to know that there is another choice. You can choose to survive. You can choose to see your mate and offspring again. There is no dishonor in choosing life over meaningless death. Think about it. Make your choice, and know that whatever you decide, I will respect you as a fellow warrior. The message ended. Tarnek stood in silence, staring at the blank screen. The humans had not boarded this ship. They had not threatened the crew. They had simply shown them the truth. That fighting was futile, that death was certain, and that survival was a choice they could make. Check the other ships, Tarnek ordered quietly. I need to know if all the crews received similar messages. The answer was yes. Every recovered scout ship contained personalized messages, not generic broadcasts, but individual communications, addressing each captain by name, showing detailed knowledge of their lives and families, presenting tactical simulations specific to their vessels, and offering the same choice: survive or die pointlessly. But that was not the worst discovery. The technical teams found something else in the ship's computer cores, evidence of intrusion that should have been impossible. The humans had penetrated Critian computer security without leaving any trace of entry. They had moved through secure systems like they owned them, accessing files that were supposed to be encrypted behind military-grade protection. How did they do this? Tarnek demanded. Our security protocols are the best in known space. Multiple encryption layers, quantum-locked access codes, biometric verification. Sir, the technical specialist interrupted, his voice trembling. The humans did not break our encryption. They bypassed it entirely. They accessed our systems through back doors we did not know existed, vulnerabilities in our own code that we never detected. The humans found them, exploited them, and did so without triggering a single security alert. Tarnek felt his legs weaken. If the humans could penetrate their computer systems this completely, what else could they do? Could they shut down weapon systems, disable shields, take control of entire ships? He returned to the Eternal Dominance to report his findings to Admiral Krelvor. The Admiral listened in growing horror as Tarnek described what had been found. They did not just send messages, Tarnek concluded. They demonstrated absolute dominance over our information systems. They showed our crews that we have no secrets from them, no security they cannot breach, no protection they cannot overcome. And they did it without violence, without threats, simply by showing us they could. Kor looked older than he had just days before. The stress of command in this impossible situation was taking its toll. What is our current fleet status? Morale is at 58% and falling. Sir, we have had 137 requests for transfer from frontline vessels. 4 ships have reported critical systems failures that are actually crew sabotage crews, disabling their own ships to avoid combat. Medical facilities are overwhelmed with stress casualties. Fleet coordination efficiency is below 60%, and the humans, their 47 ships maintain perfect formation and perfect readiness. They conduct training exercises daily, demonstrating capabilities that exceed anything in our fleet. They broadcast constantly, not threats, but educational information about human warfare, human psychology, human survival strategies. Sir, they are teaching us how dangerous they are, and the lessons are working. Krelvor accessed his personal communication terminal. Another message from Admiral Chen had arrived overnight. He opened it with hesitation. This time, Chen was not alone in the video. Behind him stood several other humans in different uniforms. Chen gestured to them as he spoke. Admiral Krelvor, I wanted to introduce you to some of my staff. This is Dr. Sarah Mitchell, our fleet psychiatrist. She specializes in combat stress and psychological warfare. This is Colonel David Park, our cyber warfare specialist. He has been leading our information operations. This is Commander Rachel Torres, our strategic communications officer. She designs our messaging campaigns. Chen paused, letting Krelvor absorb that information. The humans had dedicated specialists for psychological warfare, cyber operations, and strategic messaging. This was not improvised. This was doctrine refined through experience, executed with precision. I show you this, Chen continued, because I want you to understand that what we are doing is not accident or luck. This is how humanity fights. We learned long ago that the best way to win a war is to make your enemy realize that fighting is not worth the cost. We have specialists whose entire careers are built around this strategy. We have universities that teach these subjects. We have centuries of accumulated knowledge about human psychology. And we have learned that what works on humans works even better on species who have never encountered this approach. Chen's expression softened slightly. Admiral, I have read your service record. You are a brilliant tactical commander. You have won 17 campaigns. You have never lost a battle. I respect your accomplishments greatly, and that is why I am asking you, professional to professional, to consider whether this battle serves any purpose. You can attack us. You will lose ships, many ships. You will lose crew members, many crew members. You may even succeed in destroying our fleet, though I promise you the cost will be higher than you imagine. But what will you gain? A devastated coalition that cannot be profitably absorbed into your hegemony. A Pyrrhic victory that weakens your position across all your territories. Or you could choose another path. Open negotiations. Find a peaceful resolution. Demonstrate that the Cryan hegemony is wise enough to choose diplomacy over destruction. History will remember you not as a commander who won another battle, but as a leader who was wise enough to prevent a war. The message ended with a final image. It was a human monument, a wall covered with names, thousands upon thousands of names carved into stone. This is the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in our capital city, Chen's voice explained over the image. It contains the names of 58,000 humans who died in a single conflict. A war that accomplished nothing, solved nothing, just killed people, until everyone agreed to stop. We built this monument to remind ourselves that war without purpose is not glory, but tragedy. Do not let your crew members' names be carved into whatever monument the Critians build. Choose peace. Choose survival. Choose wisdom. Krelvor closed the message and sat in darkness, thinking everything the human said was true. The mathematics of the coming battle were terrible. His fleet would win probably, but the cost would be devastating. And for what? To conquer a coalition that would be worthless after such a destructive war. But the Critian hegemony had never retreated, never withdrawn, never chosen peace over victory. How could he be the first admiral in Critian history to do so? His communication terminal chimed again. This time it was not a message from the humans. It was from High Command, the ruling council of the Critanian hegemony. Krelvor opened the transmission with trepidation. The council leader's face appeared, his scales showing the deep red of anger. Admiral Krelvor, we have been monitoring the situation at the Valoran Nexus. We are concerned about reports of declining morale and delayed engagement. You were ordered to destroy the coalition and establish hegemony control over the sector. Why have you not done so? Krelvor chose his words carefully. Council leader, the situation is more complex than our initial intelligence suggested. The humans, 47 ships, the council leader interrupted. You have 3,000 vessels under your command. 47 ships should be irrelevant. Are you telling me that the mighty Crithian war fleet is afraid of 47 ships? We are not afraid, Krelvor said, though he knew it was a lie. We are being cautious. The humans have demonstrated capabilities that I do not care what they have demonstrated. I care about results. You have 6 hours to engage and destroy the enemy, or you will be relieved of command and face court-martial for cowardice. Is that understood? The transmission ended before Krelvor could respond. 6 hours. The council had given him 6 hours to attack or face disgrace and punishment. He called his senior officers to an emergency meeting. They appeared in holographic projection around his command chamber, and he saw fear in every face. You heard the orders from High Command, Kavor said. We attack in 6 hours or face consequences. Prepare your ships. Captain Vex now spoke up, his voice shaking. Admiral, my crew is on the edge of mutiny. They have been watching the human broadcasts. They have seen the simulations. They know what will happen to us. If I order them into battle, I am not certain they will follow orders. Other captains nodded agreement. The discipline that had held the Critian fleet together for decades was crumbling under the relentless pressure of human psychological warfare. Then we must restore their confidence, Krelvor said, though he did not know how. We will conduct a demonstration. We will show them that the humans are not invincible. We will prove that our fear is unfounded. But how could he prove that? The humans had been careful never to show weakness, never to make mistakes, never to give the Critians any evidence that they could be defeated. An idea formed in Kavor's mind. Dangerous, risky, but perhaps necessary. We will send a single ship forward. He announced one heavy cruiser. It will approach the human fleet and issue a challenge. Single combat, one of their ships against one of ours. If they refuse, we expose them as cowards hiding behind psychological tricks. If they accept and we win, we prove they can be defeated. If they accept and we lose, at least we gain tactical data on their capabilities. His officers looked uncertain, but no one had a better plan. Captain Drexel, Krelvor said, addressing the commander of the heavy cruiser, Vengeance Eternal. You have the honor of representing the Krydian hegemony. Choose your best crew. Prepare your ship. Challenge the humans to single combat. Captain Drexel's scales shifted through several colors before settling on the dark purple of determination. It will be done. Admiral, I will show them that Krydian warriors do not fear death. The Vengeance Eternal broke formation and moved forward, approaching the human defensive line. It broadcast a challenge on all frequencies. Single combat. Ship to ship. Winner takes honor. On the human flagship, Admiral Chen received the challenge and smiled grimly. The Krydians were desperate, trying to salvage morale through a demonstration of courage. It was a good strategy. Actually, respect for an enemy who understood that sometimes you had to fight just to prove you could. Tactical assessment, Chen ordered. Commander Park pulled up the analysis. The Vengeance Eternal is a heavy cruiser, one of their most powerful vessels, heavily armored, powerful shields, significant firepower. In a one-on-one engagement, it would take one of our destroyers approximately 6 minutes to achieve a kill. Probability of our victory, 94%. Risk to our ship, minimal. Chen nodded slowly. Open a channel to the Krydian vessel. The display showed Captain Drexel on the bridge of his ship, scales bright with determination and underlying fear. Captain Drexel, Chen said, we accept your challenge, but I want to make something clear first. This does not have to end in death. Disable your ship and we will consider you honorably defeated. No lives need to be lost. Today, Drexel's scales darkened further. You think we fear death, human? We are Krydian warriors. We will fight until our ship is destroyed or yours is. There is no middle ground. Chen sighed. Very well. Prepare yourself, Captain. May your death have meaning, since you insist on dying. The channel closed. Chen turned to his tactical officer. Designate the destroyer Aurora for this engagement. Give them full discretion on tactics. Objective: disable the Krydian vessel with minimal casualties to their crew. Let us show everyone that we can be merciful, even in combat. The human destroyer Aurora separated from the fleet and moved to meet the Vengeance Eternal. The two ships faced each other across 10,000 kilometers of empty space. Both fleets watched. Krydian crews hoping for a victory that would restore their courage. Coalition forces hoping the humans knew what they were doing. And the human fleet, calm and confident, waiting to demonstrate what 4 centuries of human warfare had created. The battle was about to begin. The first shots of the war would be fired, and Admiral Chen knew with absolute certainty that this single engagement would determine whether there would be a larger battle at all. The humans had spent days preparing the psychological battlefield. Now they would have to prove that their confidence was justified. Captain Drexel gave the order to fire. The Vengeance Eternal's main weapons blazed across space toward the Aurora, and the human destroyer moved, flowing through space with impossible grace. Every shot missing by calculated margins as it began its response. The demonstration the Krydians wanted was about to become a lesson they would never forget. The Vengeance Eternal fired first. 3 massive plasma bolts streaking across space toward the human destroyer Aurora. Captain Drexel watched the targeting displays with grim satisfaction. Perfect firing solution, maximum power. The human ship would not survive the first salvo, except the Aurora moved. It did not dodge or evade in the traditional sense. It simply was not where the weapons were aimed. The ship flowed through space with fluid precision, repositioning itself microseconds before impact. All 3 plasma bolts passed through empty space where the Aurora had been an instant before. Recalculate firing solution, Drex now ordered. Fire again. The Vengeance Eternal's weapons cycled and fired again. 6 shots this time, spread in a pattern that should have been impossible to avoid. But again the Aurora moved. slipping between the incoming fire like water flowing around stones. Not a single shot connected. How are they doing that? Drexel's tactical officer demanded. Their ship is too large to maneuver that quickly. The physics do not allow. The Aurora fired. A single railgun round, moving at 17% of light speed. It crossed 10,000 kilometers in the blink of an eye and struck the Vengeance Eternal's forward shield generator. The shield collapsed in that section. Another shot followed immediately, striking the exposed armor, plating, and punching through into the interior of the ship. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. Forward shield generator destroyed, the tactical officer reported. Hull breach in Section 7. Sealing emergency bulkheads. Return fire. The Vengeance Eternal unleashed everything it had. Plasma cannons, missile launchers, particle beams. A storm of destruction that filled space between the two vessels. Enough firepower to destroy 3 ships of the Aurora's class. The Aurora moved through the storm like it was dancing. Its point defense lasers tracked and destroyed incoming missiles with perfect accuracy. Its maneuvering thrusters fired in precise sequences, keeping it always just ahead of the plasma bolts. And its railguns fired again and again, each shot finding its target with mechanical precision. The second shot destroyed the Vengeance Eternal's port weapons array. The third took out the starboard missile launchers. The fourth disabled the main engine. The fifth struck the bridge itself, not penetrating, but delivering enough kinetic energy to throw everyone inside against their restraints. 3 minutes into the engagement, the Vengeance Eternal was crippled, not destroyed, not obliterated. Carefully, methodically disabled. Each shot placed with surgical precision to take out systems while minimizing casualties. All weapons offline, the tactical officer reported, his voice shaking. Main engines at 15%. Shields failing across all sections. We are defenseless. Drexnall stared at his displays in disbelief. They had lasted 3 minutes. The human simulation had predicted their destruction in 6 minutes. The humans had been generous in their estimate, or they had deliberately held back to avoid killing. The Aurora ceased fire and held position. Weapons still trained on the crippled Critian vessel, but not firing. A communication request came through. Drexel accepted it with trembling hands. Admiral Chen appeared on the display, looking tired and sad. Captain Drexnall, you fought with courage and honor. Your ship is disabled, but your crew lives. I am giving you a choice now. Surrender and receive medical assistance, or continue fighting and be destroyed. Please choose survival. Please let your crew see their families again. Drex now looked around his bridge. His crew members stared back at him with fear and hope mixed in their expressions. They wanted to live. He wanted to live. But Critian warriors did not surrender. Except what was the point of dying when death accomplished nothing? We surrender, Drexel said quietly. We request medical assistance for our wounded. Chen nodded with clear respect. Medical teams are being dispatched now. Captain Drexnall, you are a brave warrior. I am sorry this had to happen, but I am glad you chose life. There is no dishonor in surviving. The transmission ended. Drexnall slumped in his command chair and felt tears of shame and relief running down his face. They had lost. They had been utterly, completely defeated in 3 minutes against a single human ship, and the human had been merciful, had held back, had given them the chance to surrender. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Krelvor watched the entire engagement with growing horror. His best heavy cruiser, crewed by elite warriors, had been taken apart like a training exercise, and the human destroyer had done it effortlessly, almost casually, like it was demonstrating technique rather than fighting for survival. The message was clear. If one human ship could do this to one of their best vessels, what would 47 human ships do to the entire fleet? Fleet status, Krelvor demanded. Subcommander Tarnks's voice was barely audible. Sir, morale has collapsed. We are receiving surrender requests from 12 ships. 20 more are reporting critical systems failures that appear to be sabotage. Crew efficiency is below 40% and falling rapidly. Admiral, the fleet is disintegrating. Kavor looked at his tactical displays. 3,000 ships, the largest war fleet the Critian hegemony had ever assembled, and it was falling apart without a battle even occurring. The humans had done exactly what they promised. They had prepared the battlefield, and the battlefield was the mind of every Critian crew member, who now understood that fighting was futile. A communication alert interrupted his thoughts. High Command again. The council leader's face appeared, still showing the deep red of anger. Admiral Krelvor, we watched your demonstration. Your heavy cruiser was destroyed in 3 minutes by a single human ship. This is unacceptable. You will engage the full human fleet immediately, with overwhelming force. Crush them. Show them that numbers still matter. Do it now, or face execution for cowardice and failure. The transmission ended. Kavor sat in silence, facing an impossible decision. Attack, and lose hundreds, perhaps thousands of ships against an enemy that had already proven its superiority, or refuse orders, and be executed as a coward. He was about to give the attack order, when another communication came through. This one was from Captain Vexnall of the Infinite Fury, one of his most trusted commanders. Admiral, I am sorry, but I cannot follow orders to attack. My crew will not fight. They have seen what the humans can do. They have received messages from the humans, explaining that this war serves no purpose. They refuse to die for nothing. I am surrendering my ship to human custody. I take full responsibility for this action. Before Krelvor could respond, more messages flooded in. 5 ships surrendering, 10 ships, 20, 50. The trickle became a flood, as crews decided they would rather face punishment for cowardice than certain death in battle. Sir, we have mass desertions occurring across the fleet, Tarnks reported, his voice rising in panic. Entire squadrons are breaking formation. Some are surrendering to the humans. Others are simply fleeing the combat zone. We have lost operational control of approximately 40% of our forces. Krelvor felt the situation spiraling beyond his control. The fleet was not just losing morale, it was actively rejecting orders, choosing survival over duty, fragmenting into hundreds of independent ships, making their own decisions. Another message came through, this time from Admiral Chen. Krelvor almost did not want to open it, but he had no choice. Chen's face appeared, and for the first time, the human admiral looked genuinely sympathetic. Admiral Krelvor, I am watching your fleet fall apart, and I take no pleasure in it. You are a good commander, caught in an impossible situation. Your high command has ordered you to attack, but your crews understand that attack means death. They are choosing to live, and I respect that choice. I want to make you an offer, a way out of this situation that allows you to survive with honor. Krelvor leaned forward. What offer? Order your fleet to withdraw. Tell your high command that the humans deployed weapons and tactics you could not counter, and that further engagement would result in the complete destruction of your forces with no meaningful gain. You will be censured for failure, perhaps even demoted, but you will be alive. Your crews will be alive, and in time, the hegemony will recognize that choosing to preserve your forces was the wise decision. Or you can attack us. Your fleet will disintegrate further. Many ships will be destroyed. Many crew members will die. And in the end, you will still fail to achieve your objectives. The choice is yours, Admiral. But please choose wisdom over pride. The transmission ended. Krelvor sat in his command chair and felt the weight of command crushing him. Everything he had built over decades of military service was collapsing. But Chen was right. Attacking now would accomplish nothing except death and destruction. He opened a fleet-wide channel. 3,000 ships, or what remained of them under his control, waited for his orders. All ships, this is Admiral Krelvor. I am ordering a full fleet withdrawal. We are returning to Agamony space. This action is taken based on tactical assessment that continued engagement would result in unacceptable casualties, with no strategic gain. All vessels will reform into retreat formation and prepare for faster-than-light jump. Silence filled the communication channels for a long moment. Then, one by one, his captains acknowledged the order. Relief flooded through the fleet, as crews realized they would survive. Ships that had been fleeing returned to formation. Ships that had surrendered requested permission to rejoin the fleet. Within an hour, the Krydian war fleet was reorganized and preparing to depart. But not everyone was willing to retreat. One ship, the dreadnought Eternal Glory, refused the withdrawal order. Its commander, Admiral Krelvor's rival, Commander Zex Thor, broadcast a message on all channels. This is Commander Zeth Thor, of the Eternal Glory. I do not recognize Admiral Krelvor's authority to order retreat. The Krydian hegemony does not flee from inferior forces. I will engage the humans alone and show them what true Krydian warriors are capable of. Any ship that wishes to join me in restoring our honor may do so. No other ships joined him. Zexthor's dreadnought turned and accelerated toward the human fleet, weapons charging, engines at full power. It was the largest ship in the Krydian fleet, a massive vessel capable of destroying dozens of smaller ships. Admiral Chen watched the dreadnought approach and felt sadness settle over him. One more warrior who could not accept that fighting was pointless. One more commander who chose death over the appearance of cowardice. Tactical options, Chen said quietly. Commander Park reviewed the data. The dreadnought is a formidable vessel, sir. It would take our entire fleet approximately 12 minutes to destroy it. Alternatively, we could disable it like we did the Vengeance Eternal, but it would take longer and risk more casualties. No, Chen said. We are not going to fight it. His officers looked at him in confusion. Sir. Open a channel to Commander Zexthor. Personal communication. My authorization only. The channel opened. Zexthor appeared on the display, his scales showing the bright red of battle fury. Human Admiral, prepare to face a true warrior. I will not surrender. I will not retreat. I will destroy your fleet, or die trying. Chen studied the Krydian commander carefully. Young, proud, desperate to prove himself. Exactly the kind of warrior who would throw his life away for honor that existed only in his own mind. Commander Zexthor, Chen said softly. I understand your position. You believe retreating is dishonorable. You believe you must fight to maintain your pride. I respect that. So, I am going to make you an offer. Single combat. Your dreadnought against one of our destroyers. Not the Aurora that destroyed the Vengeance Eternal. A different ship, less experienced. If you win, you can claim you defeated humanity in combat. If you lose, at least you fought with courage. Does that satisfy your honor? Zexthor's scales flickered with confusion. You would give me an advantage. Why? Because I understand what it is to be a warrior, Chen replied. Because I know that sometimes honor demands action, even when logic says otherwise. Because I would rather let you have your fight and your honor than simply destroy you without giving you the chance to prove yourself. Do you accept? Zexthor was silent for a long moment. Then his scales shifted to dark purple determination, mixed with respect. I accept your offer, human. Send your ship. We will settle this warrior to warrior. Chen designated the destroyer Valiant for the engagement. It was one of their newer ships. With a less experienced crew than the Aurora, not helpless, but not the overwhelming force that had dismantled the Vengeance Eternal, the two ships faced each other. The Eternal Glory, massive and powerful, bristling with weapons. The Valiant, smaller but faster, its crew tense and ready. The battle began. The dreadnought opened fire with everything it had, and this time, the human ship did not have the overwhelming advantage. The Valiant took hits. Shields flickered and strained. The crew worked frantically to maintain systems as damage reports flooded in. But the Valiant fought back, its weapons finding targets on the larger ship. Railgun rounds punched through armor. Missiles slipped past point defenses. Lasers carved burning tracks across the dreadnought's hull. 3 minutes passed. The Valiant lost its forward shield generator. The Eternal Glory's main weapons array was destroyed. Both ships were damaged. Both crews were fighting desperately, and neither was willing to surrender. Chen watched with growing concern. This was taking too long. The Valiant was in real danger now. He could order the rest of the fleet to assist, but that would defeat the purpose of the single combat. Zexthor needed this. Needed to fight. Needed to test himself. Needed to prove his courage even in defeat. At the 4-minute mark, the Valiant's tactical officer found an opening. The dreadnought's vententral shields were failing, exposing a weak point near the main reactor. One perfect shot, and the battle would be over. The Valiant fired. The railgun round struck true, penetrating deep into the dreadnought's interior. But instead of targeting the reactor itself, the shot severed the power conduits around it. The Eternal Glory's weapons went dark. Its engines failed. Life support remained online, but the ship was dead in space. Commander Zex Thor sat on his bridge and felt tears of rage and grief streaming down his face. Defeated, destroyed, his pride in ruins, his honor shattered. The humans had beaten him despite the advantage they had given him. A communication request came through. He accepted it, expecting Admiral Chen's face. Instead, he saw the young captain of the Valiant, a human woman with exhaustion and respect in her eyes. "Commander Zethor," she said, her voice from shouting orders during the battle. "You fought brilliantly. My crew is in awe of your skill and courage. You damaged us badly. If the fight had lasted another minute, you might have won. You have nothing to be ashamed of. You gave us the hardest fight we have had in years. That is honor. That is victory." Even in defeat, Zexthor stared at her. The human was offering him respect, understanding recognition that he had fought well, even though he lost. Was that not honor? Was that not enough? "We are sending medical teams and repair crews," the captain continued. "Your crew fought bravely too. They deserve to survive and tell the story of this battle. Will you accept our assistance?" "Up," said Zex. Thor found himself nodding, too tired to argue anymore. "Yes, I accept. Thank you for the honor of this combat." "Thank you for accepting," the captain replied. "You gave my crew valuable experience. We will remember this battle and remember you with respect." The transmission ended. Zex Thor looked around his bridge at his exhausted, wounded, but living crew members. They had fought. They had proved their courage, and they had survived. Perhaps that was enough. Aboard the Eternal Dominance, Admiral Kavor watched the end of the single combat and felt complex emotions wearing in his chest. Relief that Zex Thor had survived, sadness that it had come to this, and strange respect for the humans who had given their enemy honor even in defeat. The Cryon fleet completed its preparations for withdrawal. Ships formed into travel formation, damaged vessels supported by those still intact. The crews were quiet, processing what had happened. They had come to conquer, and had retreated without a major battle. But somehow that felt more right than dying pointlessly. Admiral Chen broadcast one final message to the departing fleet. "Warriors of the Cridian hegemony, you showed courage in coming here. You show wisdom in leaving. There is no shame in choosing peace over war, survival over destruction. Go home. Tell your people what you learned here. Tell them that humanity seeks peaceful coexistence, not conquest. Tell them that strength is not just about weapons and ships, but about knowing when to fight and when to choose a better path. Safe travels, and may we meet again as friends rather than enemies." The Cridian fleet jumped to faster than light speed and vanished from the Valoran nexus, leaving behind only the disabled vessels that would be repaired and returned once diplomatic channels were established. In the Coalition Command Center, silence reigned as the delegates tried to process what they had witnessed. 3,000 ships had arrived, ready for battle. 3,000 ships had departed without a major engagement, and humanity's 47 vessels remained intact, victorious, without truly fighting. Ambassador Tala was the first to speak. "What did we just witness?" Admiral Chen, who had joined the coalition commanders to observe the departure, smiled tiredly. "You witnessed the culmination of 4 centuries of human warfare experience. We learned long ago that the deadliest weapon is not the one that destroys the enemy. It is the one that makes the enemy choose not to fight in the first place." Vor rumbled thoughtfully. "You broke them without breaking them. You defeated them by showing them defeat was inevitable." "We showed them the truth," Chen corrected. "That fighting would cost more than it gained. That survival is not cowardice, but wisdom. That there are better ways to resolve conflict than mutual destruction. These are lessons humanity learned the hard way, through millions of casualties across thousands of conflicts. We paid a terrible price for this knowledge. Now we share it, hoping others can learn without paying the same cost." Kina's feathers ruffled in admiration. "Will the Cryans be back?" "Eventually, perhaps," Chen admitted. "But next time they will come for negotiation, not conquest, because they learned today that humanity is not weak, that we understand warfare better than they do, and that we prefer peace, but can wage war with devastating efficiency if necessary. That knowledge will change how they approach us, and any species we protect." Tala looked at the human admiral with new understanding. "You are not warriors who learned peace. You are peacemakers who remember war. That is why you are so effective. Chen nodded slowly. We are survivors, Ambassador. We have survived ourselves for thousands of years. That makes us uniquely qualified to help others survive too. The coalition delegates sat in silence, absorbing the magnitude of what they had witnessed. Humanity had entered the war zone and won without firing most of their weapons. They had collapsed an enemy fleet through psychology, demonstration, and careful mercy. It was a new kind of warfare, one based not on destruction, but on understanding, and it was terrifying in its effectiveness. The coalition conference hall was quiet in the aftermath of the Cridian withdrawal. Ambassador Tala sat across from Admiral Chen, in a private meeting room away from the other delegates and their endless questions. Outside the windows, the human fleet maintained its position. 47 ships that had changed the face of galactic warfare without firing most of their weapons. I need to understand, Tala said finally, breaking the silence. How did you do this? How did humanity develop such effective psychological warfare? Most species barely understand their own psychology, let alone how to weaponize it against others. Chen poured himself water from the pitcher on the table between them, taking his time before answering. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of painful history. We developed these techniques because we spent thousands of years fighting ourselves, he said. Humans have been at war with other humans for our entire recorded history. Nation against nation, ideology against ideology, religion against religion, sometimes even family against family. We learned every possible way to hurt each other, manipulate each other, and defeat each other. Not because we are especially violent compared to other species, but because we are very good at learning from our mistakes, and then teaching those lessons to the next generation. He pulled up a holographic display showing human history. Centuries of conflicts compressed into data points. In our 20th century alone, we fought 2 global wars that killed over 100 million people. We developed weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. We came closer to extinction than any species should ever come. And through all of that, we learned how fear works, how morale breaks, how soldiers decide whether to fight or surrender, how commanders make decisions under stress. We learned all of this through terrible, bloody experience. Tala studied the data with horrified fascination. You said you came close to extinction. How did you survive? By understanding ourselves, Chen replied. After our second global war, we developed psychological warfare as a formal military discipline. We studied our own species, trying to understand what makes humans fight and what makes them stop fighting. We recruited scientists, doctors, artists, philosophers, anyone who understood human nature. We gave them resources and told them to find ways to win wars without destroying everything. And they succeeded. They created techniques for breaking enemy morale, for spreading doubt, for making warfare so psychologically costly that leaders chose diplomacy instead. He paused, remembering. During our third global conflict, which thankfully remained limited, we used these techniques extensively. We broadcast messages into enemy territories. We showed their soldiers what would happen if fighting continued. We made their leaders question whether victory was worth the cost. And it worked. The war ended not with total destruction, but with negotiated peace. Millions of lives were saved because we had learned how to fight without killing. And then you took those techniques to space, Tala said, understanding dawning. Yes. When we encountered our first alien species, we realized something important. The psychological techniques that work on humans work even better on species who have never encountered them. Most species develop weapons technology faster than they develop psychological sophistication. They understand how to destroy, but not how to manipulate, deceive, or psychologically dominate. Humans are the opposite. We had to learn psychological warfare because our weapons became too dangerous to use freely. We had to find ways to win without triggering mutual annihilation. Tala leaned back in her chair. So when you encountered the Corians, you were not improvising. You were applying established doctrine. Exactly, Chen confirmed. Operation Ghost Protocol is based on techniques we have refined over centuries. Gather intelligence on enemy commanders and crew. Identify their fears and weaknesses. Demonstrate overwhelming capability without actually engaging. Show them detailed simulations of what would happen if they fight. Offer honorable alternatives to combat. Make them realize that choosing peace is not cowardice but intelligence. Every step was planned, practiced, and executed by specialists who have trained their entire careers for this mission. The personal messages, Tala said. The files you left on the scout ships. How did you gather that information so quickly? Chen smiled slightly. That is another human specialty, information warfare. We have been hacking each other's computer systems for centuries. Every nation on Earth developed cyber warfare capabilities because everyone was constantly trying to spy on everyone else. When we entered space, we discovered that most alien computer systems are less secure than human systems because most species have not had to defend against sophisticated cyber attacks. The Cridians have excellent physical security, but their information security has gaps we learned to exploit decades ago. You make it sound so simple, Tala said. But surely not every species would respond the way the Cridians did. What if you face an enemy that does not fear death? That cannot be psychologically manipulated. Chen's expression grew serious. Then we show them why fear was the merciful option. The psychological warfare we used against the Corians was our first choice, because it saves lives. But we have other options. Humanity did not survive thousands of years of warfare by only having one strategy. If an enemy cannot be convinced to choose peace, we are fully capable of fighting and winning through more traditional means. But it would be costly, bloody, and ultimately tragic. We prefer to avoid that outcome if possible. So the broadcasts about nuclear weapons, the footage of your wars, all of that was genuine. But Talvera said, "You really are as dangerous as you claimed." More dangerous, Chen said quietly. Because we understand what we are capable of, and we choose restraint. A species that does not understand their own capacity for destruction is far more likely to use it carelessly. Humans know exactly what we can do, and exactly why we should not do it, unless absolutely necessary. That knowledge makes us more effective as peacemakers, and more terrifying as enemies. Tala sat in silence for a long moment, processing everything she had learned. Finally, she asked the question that had been bothering her since the Cryans departed. What happens now? The Cryan hegemony will report this to their leadership. Other species will hear about what happened here. Humanity's reputation will spread across the galaxy. Are you prepared for that? Chen nodded slowly. We have been preparing for first contact with galactic civilization for 200 years. We knew that once we entered the larger community, our history would be examined. We made a decision to be honest about who we are and what we have done. Yes, humanity has a violent history. Yes, we nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times. Yes, we are capable of terrible things. But we are also capable of learning, growing, and choosing better paths. We want the galaxy to know both sides of human nature, the darkness and the light, the violence and the mercy, because that complete picture is what will keep the peace. You want other species to be afraid of you, Tala said, understanding. We want other species to respect us, Chen corrected. Fear is a component of that, yes, but it is not the whole picture. We want species to know that humanity prefers peaceful cooperation, but that we are fully capable of defending ourselves and our allies. We want aggressive species to think twice before starting conflicts. We want peaceful species to feel safe under human protection. Fear alone breeds resentment and eventual rebellion. Respect, combined with demonstrated mercy, breeds stable, lasting peace. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the human fleet. Ambassador, humanity spent 4,000 years learning how to make war. We spent the last 200 years learning how to make peace. We are still not perfect at either one, but we are very, very good at both. And we intend to use that knowledge to help build a galaxy where species can coexist without constant warfare. A noble goal, Tala said. But will other species accept human leadership? Many will resent being protected by such a young species. We are not asking for leadership, Chen replied. We are offering partnership. The coalition of free worlds can continue governing itself. We will simply be insurance, a guarantee that aggressive species like the Cridians will think very carefully before attacking. And over time, we will share our knowledge, teach other species about psychological warfare, information security, strategic communications, help them develop the same tools we have, so they can defend themselves without depending on humanity. You would share your military secrets? Tala asked in surprise. Our techniques, yes. Our specific capabilities, no. But the fundamental knowledge about psychology, about how to win without fighting, about how to make peace attractive and war costly, that knowledge should be universal. The more species that understand these principles, the safer the galaxy becomes for everyone. A chime interrupted their conversation. Commander Park appeared on the communication display. Admiral, the Cridian High Command has sent a formal communication. They are requesting immediate diplomatic talks. They want to establish formal relations with humanity and discuss mutual defense arrangements. Chen smiled. That was faster than I expected. What are they offering? Full diplomatic recognition, technology exchange programs, and joint military training operations. They also want to discuss human mediation in their border disputes with the Theon Collective. Sir, they are essentially asking us to become the Cridian hegemony's official military advisors. Tala laughed in disbelief. They came to conquer you, and now they want to hire you. They came to conquer the coalition, Chen corrected. They encountered humanity instead, and they learned that we have something they need. Knowledge about how to wage war effectively, without destroying everything. The Cryans are practical. If they cannot beat us, they would rather join us. I consider that a success. Accept their request, he told Commander Park. Schedule diplomatic talks for next week. In the meantime, start preparing our cultural exchange proposals. If we are going to work with the Cridians, we need to help them understand human values and psychology. This is an opportunity to turn an enemy into an ally. The communication ended. Tala shook her head in amazement. In less than a week, you have turned the greatest military threat in known space into a diplomatic partner. That is extraordinary. That is human nature. Chen said. We fight when necessary, but we prefer to make friends, stronger together than apart, as we learned the hard way on Earth. Now we apply that lesson on a galactic scale. Over the following weeks, the full impact of humanity's entrance into galactic affairs became clear. The story of the Valoran Nexus spread through every major civilization. 3,000 Cridian ships had retreated before 47 human vessels. A war had been won without a battle. An enemy had been defeated through psychology, rather than firepower. Different species interpreted the events differently. Some saw humanity as dangerous wildcards, too unpredictable to trust. Others saw them as valuable allies who could provide protection against aggressive neighbors. A few saw them as potential threats that should be monitored carefully. But everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity had changed the rules of galactic warfare. The old model of overwhelming force and numerical superiority was no longer guaranteed to work. Now commanders had to consider psychological factors, information warfare, and the morale of their crews. A fleet could be defeated before the first shot was fired, if the enemy was skilled enough in psychological operations. The Cryans became humanity's most enthusiastic students. Admiral Kravore, far from being executed for failure, was promoted to lead the Joint Human Military Academy. He spent his days learning human psychological warfare techniques and teaching them to Cridian officers. The transformation was remarkable. Within 6 months, the Cridian military had reorganized its entire tactical doctrine to incorporate human principles. You have made us stronger without giving us more weapons, Krelvor told Admiral Chen during one of their regular meetings. You have taught us that the mind is the ultimate battlefield. This knowledge will serve the hegemony well for generations. Just remember to use it for defense, not conquest. Chen replied with a slight smile. That was the condition of our cooperation. Understood, Krelvor assured him. The hegemony has learned that expansion through conquest is too costly when potential targets can employ psychological resistance. Better to expand through diplomacy and mutual benefit. You have made us practical, Admiral Chen. Perhaps that is your most dangerous weapon of all. The coalition of free worlds restructured itself into a more formal defensive alliance, with humanity serving as military advisors and strategic planners. Human specialists were stationed on coalition worlds, teaching psychological warfare, information security, and strategic communications. The change was profound. Species that had relied solely on weapons and fortifications now had new tools for defense. Ambassador Tala became the coalition's chief liaison with humanity. She spent hours with Admiral Chen and other human leaders, learning about Earth's history, studying human conflicts, trying to understand what made humanity so effective at warfare and peacemaking simultaneously. "You are contradictions," she told Chen one evening as they reviewed diplomatic reports. "You hate war but excel at it. You value peace but prepare extensively for conflict. You offer mercy but can be ruthlessly efficient when necessary. How do you reconcile these contradictions?" Chen considered the question carefully. "We do not reconcile them. We embrace them. Humans are complex beings capable of both great compassion and great violence. We learned that denying either side of our nature leads to disaster. Pretending we are peaceful when we have violent instincts leads to those instincts emerging uncontrolled. Pretending we are warriors when we long for peace leads to unnecessary conflicts. So we accept both. We acknowledge that we are capable of terrible things, and we choose to do better things instead. That choice made constantly and consciously is what defines humanity." "And if you encounter a species that cannot be reasoned with?" Tala asked. "A species that has no fear, no psychology you can exploit, no desire for peace?" Chen's expression grew somber. "Then we show them the other side of human nature, the side that survived ice ages, plagues, and nuclear wars. The side that nearly exterminated itself but persisted anyway. The side that develops weapons capable of destroying planets, and then has the discipline not to use them. We hope never to encounter such a species ambassador. But if we do, they will learn why the Critians chose diplomacy over continued conflict." 6 months after the events at the Valoran Nexus, a new threat emerged. The Axion Collective, a machine intelligence that had been expanding silently through uncharted space, suddenly appeared at the border of Coalition territory. Unlike biological species, the Axon machines had no fear of death, no families to protect, no psychological weaknesses to exploit. They simply calculated that Coalition space contained resources they needed, and they began harvesting those resources with mechanical efficiency. The Coalition forces engaged them in 3 separate battles, and lost all 3. The Axion machines were not intimidated by demonstrations of force. They were not influenced by psychological warfare. They simply fought with mathematical precision until they achieved their objectives, or were destroyed. The Coalition sent an urgent request to humanity. "We need your help. The Axion Collective cannot be negotiated with, cannot be frightened, cannot be psychologically defeated. If you have other options, now is the time to deploy them." Admiral Chen reviewed the intelligence reports on the Axon Collective and felt a familiar weight settle on his shoulders. This was the scenario humanity had hoped never to encounter, an enemy that could only be stopped through direct combat, an enemy that would force humanity to show the galaxy what human warfare looked like when all other options were exhausted. "Prepare the fleet," he ordered. "Full battle deployment. Every ship we have in this sector, and send for the second contact fleet from Earth. We will need reinforcements." Commander Park looked worried. "Sir, are we really going to engage in full-scale warfare? That is not what humanity is supposed to represent." "Humanity represents survival," Chen replied. "Sometimes that means choosing peace. Sometimes it means choosing war. We tried peace with the Critians, and it worked. But the Axion machines are different. They will not stop unless we make them stop. So we will show the galaxy what happens when humanity stops trying to avoid conflict and starts trying to win it." He looked at his officers with steel in his eyes. "For 6 months, we have been the galaxy's peacekeepers, helping species avoid war. That was our choice. But do not forget what we truly are. We are survivors of thousands of years of human warfare. We are descendants of soldiers who fought in trenches, who flew bombers through enemy fire, who commanded nuclear submarines, who piloted starfighters. We made peace our first choice, because we remember war. Now we face an enemy that leaves us no other choice. So we will remind the galaxy and ourselves what human warfare looks like when mercy is no longer an option." The human fleet assembled at the Coalition border, and this time there was no psychological warfare, no broadcasts, no attempts at communication. The Axion machines wanted resources. Humanity wanted to protect its allies. The 2 positions were incompatible, and only force would resolve the conflict. The battle lasted 6 hours. Human ships moved with the same fluid grace they had demonstrated at the Valorian Nexus, but now their weapons fired without restraint. Railgun rounds tore through Axion vessels at relativistic speeds. Missiles swarmed in coordinated patterns that overwhelmed point defenses. Lasers carved through armor with focused intensity, and the humans fought with a coordinated precision that machines could match but not exceed. When the battle ended, 70% of the Axion force was destroyed. The remainder withdrew, their calculations showing that human military capability exceeded the value of the resources they sought. The coalition was saved, but at a cost. Humanity had lost 12 ships and over 3,000 crew members. In the aftermath, Admiral Chen stood in the memorial bay of the flagship, looking at the holographic display showing names of the fallen. So many names, so much sacrifice. He had tried to avoid this, tried to win through psychology and diplomacy, but some enemies could only be defeated the hard way. Ambassador Tala found him there, standing in silence before the memorial. "I am sorry for your losses, Admiral. Your crew fought bravely. They fought because they had no other choice," Chen said quietly. "This is what we wanted to avoid, what we worked so hard to prevent. War without alternatives. Death without mercy. This is the old way, the way humanity tried to move beyond. But you won," Tala pointed out. "You protected the coalition. You stopped an enemy that could not be stopped through any other means." "We won," Chen agreed. "But winning through warfare always has a cost. 3,000 human lives. More on the coalition side. Destroyed ships. Devastated families. This is what we hope to make obsolete through psychological warfare and diplomacy. This is why we developed those techniques to avoid this outcome." He turned to face her. "Let this battle be a lesson for the entire galaxy. Humanity prefers peace. We will exhaust every diplomatic option before resorting to warfare. But when warfare becomes unavoidable, when enemies cannot be reasoned with, or frightened, or convinced to choose better paths, humanity will fight with everything we have learned from 4,000 years of warfare. And we will win, because we understand that winning requires sacrifice, that survival requires determination, and that protecting those we care about is worth any cost." Talvera nodded slowly. "The galaxy will remember both lessons, that humanity seeks peace first, but wages war with devastating effectiveness when necessary." "That is a powerful combination, Admiral. It is the human condition," Chen replied, "hoping for the best while preparing for the worst. Seeking peace while understanding war, offering mercy while maintaining strength. These contradictions define us. They make us who we are, and they will guide us as we continue exploring the galaxy and making our place among the stars." In the weeks that followed, humanity's reputation evolved. They were no longer seen as just psychological warfare specialists or clever manipulators. They were recognized as a species that understood both the art of peace and the science of war and knew when to employ each. A species that would negotiate tirelessly for peace, but fight ruthlessly when necessary. A species that had survived themselves and would survive anything the galaxy threw at them. The Cridian hegemony sent Admiral Krelvor to represent them at the human memorial service for the fallen. He stood among human mourners and understood, perhaps for the first time, what drove human military doctrine. They trained for war so they could choose peace. They prepared for death so they could protect life. They became excellent at destruction so they could prevent it. "Your species is remarkable," Krelvor told Admiral Chen after the service. "You fight when you must, but you mourn those who fall. You win battles, but you remember the cost. Most species celebrate victory. Humans memorialize sacrifice, because we know that every victory through warfare is also a defeat," Chen replied. "A defeat of our hope for peace, our dream of solving problems without violence, our wish that intelligence could triumph over force. We win battles, but we never forget that battle should be the last resort, not the first choice. That wisdom will serve the galaxy well," Kelvor said. "The Cridian hegemony is proud to call humanity an ally." Admiral Chen stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable Will, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, other species were watching humanity, trying to understand them, deciding how to respond to this new presence in galactic affairs. Some would become friends, others would become rivals, A few might become enemies, but humanity would face them all the same way, with intelligence first, with mercy when possible, with strength when necessary, and with the hard-won wisdom of a species that had learned every lesson about warfare the painful way. They had entered the war zone, and the enemies had collapsed before the battle started. That would become humanity's legend, the story told across the galaxy. But the full truth was more complex and more important. Humanity had learned that the greatest victory was preventing war, the greatest strength was choosing mercy, and the greatest wisdom was knowing when to fight and when to make peace. That knowledge earned through millennia of human conflict would be humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not weapons or ships or technology, but understanding. Understanding of themselves, understanding of warfare, and understanding that survival required both the courage to fight and the wisdom to stop. The human fleet maintained its position at the coalition border, guardians of a fragile peace in a dangerous galaxy. And Admiral James Chen looked at the stars and thought about all the species humanity would encounter, all the conflicts they would navigate, all the choices they would face. Humanity had made their entrance onto the galactic stage. Now they would prove, one decision at a time, that survival and compassion could coexist, that strength and mercy were not opposites but partners, and that the species which had nearly destroyed themselves had learned the lessons necessary to help build a better future for everyone. The war zone remained. There would be more conflicts, more enemies, more battles, but humanity would face them with eyes open, weapons ready, and always looking for the path that led to peace rather than destruction, because that was what humanity had become. Survivors who remembered war, peacemakers who understood violence, and protectors who knew that the greatest victory was the one where everyone lived to see tomorrow. The stars waited, full of challenges and opportunities.